Okay, so welcome everybody to Job Search Basics. Today we're going to be talking about planning and organization. And just can someone please confirm, Anil, maybe are you seeing it in presentation mode?
Yes, sure. It's very visible. Good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so this is a series of classes. They do build on each other. However, you don't necessarily have to attend all of them if you can't make it. We're going to start by talking about planning and organization today. I think a lot of us kind of have a tendency to get drawn to the idea of a resume writing first, and that's our first stop usually on our job search process journey. But I do think there's some things we should think about before we start writing our resume. And so I think it's a good idea to take some time and talk about having a plan, having some organization around your job search. And then I really think personal branding and your value proposition are some things that you really want to think about before you do your resume. And I'll, on some later slides, talk about why I think that is. So this is kind of set up in a progressive sense to get you started on the right foot from the start, so you don't have to go back and redo work and rethink things because you jumped ahead and started on the resume. So today I'm just going to do a really quick introduction of me and why you should listen to me. I'm going to talk real quickly about some classroom rules. I'm going to do a presentation. I think it'll probably take maybe 45 minutes. And then I'll open up the rest of the time for question and answer. Now, I block out 2 hours for this class, and we probably, especially today, won't take a full 2 hours unless there's lots of discussion and question afterwards. But I like to give us lots of room so that we don't have to feel like we're in a rush talking through these things. And when we get to the resume section on Wednesday, that might take a full 2 hours because there's a lot of details and a lot of questions around resume. And so that one tends to run a little longer, but I will not keep you any longer than we need you or you need to be here. But we'll give it all the space it needs to make sure that everybody's coming along and learning as we go. Okay. So I'm Jess Truman. I am a certified professional resume writer, but some of you may recognize me from my work at Intel. I had a 13-year career at Intel with the last, I think about 6 or 7 years of it, spending a lot of time in the job search strategy world. And I had specifically a role on the Blue Hire team, which was a retention program that was specifically designed to teach people how to find jobs. At that time, we were trying to keep people at Intel, but I think that most of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, it just applies to applying for jobs anywhere, and they're good skills and ideas to know about job search regardless of where you are or what company you want to apply for a job at. It's pretty general information. I do have a bachelor's of art in psychology from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I did recently publish a little workbook called Launchpad, a job search workbook, which I will reference at certain points in this class as a place where you can find lots of exercises and links. You do not need it for this class per se, but I will reference it at certain points. I did design this class very similar to a class I presented at Intel as well. As I mentioned, most of the basics around job search are pretty universal. And so this is specifically towards looking externally at jobs. I'm guessing many of you that are in this call are Intel people or Intel alumni. And so we're all pretty familiar with what's going on at Intel. And so this is a class that's kind of in a response to that, of wanting to give back to other people in my Intel community and support however I can in finding something else if your role happens to be in any kind of jeopardy. I have since April lived in Porto, Portugal. I took leave of Intel in March of this year. So I am proof that there is life after Intel, and there's a pretty good life after Intel, I will say. So with that, I'm going to move on to some classroom rules. I do want to try and start the class on time in order to be respectful for the other people that come in on time. So I'm generally going to start class maybe 2 minutes after the hour. So again, I'm recording. If you happen to need to show up late, that's fine. But try to be on time if you can. It's a good idea to mute yourself unless you're asking a question so that we don't have background noise going on that could be distracting. And I want to encourage you to ask lots of questions. So there is a function on Google Meet that allows you, if you put your hand up, it's supposed to show me that there's a question, but you can also come off mute and ask me a question. So let's just set a little bit of ground rules around asking questions. So definitely, if you have a question that's like really appropriate to what we're talking about, feel free to interrupt me and ask a question at any time. I will not be offended. If you're asking the question, either somebody else maybe wants to know or somebody else needs to know. So if you have questions, it's good to ask. I just do ask that if you have questions, that you try to keep them as specific to what we're talking about as possible. I don't want our conversation to drift. And so try and keep your questions to what we're talking about in the moment. If it's not relevant specifically to what we're talking about in the moment, you're like, oh, that makes me think about something else, then save it. And then when we do open Q&A at the end of every class, then ask your question, because it's still probably relevant for job search. It's just we want to try and stay on our train of thought for what we're talking about in the given topic of the day. So feel free, raise your hand. I'll try and check every once in a while and see if there's questions in the queue, but ask your questions any way that you feel comfortable. And that includes, again, jumping on the mic and saying, hey, Jess, sorry to interrupt, but I have a question. That's totally fine. I will not be offended. The last thing I want to say is we want to be respectful of other people in here. This is maybe vulnerable for some people to be talking about job search. And so we, want to make sure that we're respectful and kind to other people when we're talking, and going along with that question of, hey, let's, try and keep the conversation on topic. We don't want to be taking up group time for something very specific that maybe doesn't apply, it isn't general for a lot of people. So if you have something super specific that's just your individual case, what we'll maybe need to do is table that question for another time where maybe you and I can have a one-on-one conversation or an email exchange or something and work with you on your individual problem. But we want to try and keep this generally around job search related topics, and specifically the topics that we're talking about on a given day. All right. I'm just going to check real quick here and make sure everybody has gotten in okay to the meeting. Looks like we're good. Okay. Okay. So if you leave today's call, these are the things that I really want you to remember. And I'm going to say them now, and I'm going to talk about each one specifically. And then I'm going to remind you again at the end, because I think they're really important. And the first one is to start with some kind of plan, right? So I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of times I see people, the very first spark that comes into their mind when they're looking for a job is, I need a resume. That's the first thing. I need a good resume. But you actually need a good plan. You need a strategy for how you're going to attack this problem. You need some kind of guiding light that is drawing you in the direction of where you want to go. Because if you just go and try and get a resume draft and you start applying online without some kind of plan and strategy, you're going to get stuck very quickly, or you could end up in a role that is a bad fit for you because you were in a panic and you just wanted to try and get any job as soon as possible. And so then you're just going to be looking for a job again in a few months or a year, or you're going to be miserable because you didn't take the time to find a good fit. I know that it can be really stressful to look for a job, especially after a layoff, and you have bills to pay and you have people to feed and you have things to do. But having a plan will hopefully help you have less panic and less stress, and not just go off and get yourself into a bad situation. Because the reality is that even though you got laid off and even though the job market is weird right now and I'm hearing kind of hard, that does not mean that you don't have the same value in the marketplace. You have the same value in the marketplace as is when Intel was doing good, because you've been doing great work and you have accomplishments and you have skills, and those still have value in the market. So having that plan hopefully will keep you from feeling panic and feeling stress, and keep you moving towards some specific goal. And we'll talk about that a little bit more on some later slides. I think it's a good idea to treat this like a project. You maybe have some little goals for yourself, some milestones. I think a schedule is a really great thing to have. I think sometimes people, when they are in a moment of unemployment, have a tendency to kind of float a little bit. And I've seen many, many posts of people online talking about sitting in front of their computer for hours on end in their sweatpants, applying to jobs online. And that becomes their life for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months, until they finally get an offer. And it's miserable. And the truth is, this is not a way to treat yourself. So having a project in mind, having some boundaries, some guidelines of how you're going to spend your time, can really help you. And so you hear that expression many times that, when you're looking for a job, that is your job, right? It's a job to look for a job. But having that job does not mean it's an opportunity for you to abuse yourself or treat yourself badly. No, it is an opportunity for you to realign yourself with your values, your vision for your career. It's an opportunity for you to reset some really good habits. If you haven't been focusing on health, it is a great time for you to take some time and go walk your dog or go to the gym, or cook good meals. It is not the time to sit and beat yourself up about not having a job, or slave yourself to your computer. So having it treated like a project, and I know if you're at Intel, you know how to manage a project, so treat it like that. And I'm going to show you a couple tools that I'm going to give you a tool that can help you get started keeping track of things and keep it project focused. And that's my last piece of advice. Track everything you're doing. Keep a record of the networking that you're doing. Keep a track of all the applications and when you applied and what conversations and emails you've had with hiring managers, because you're going to be pursuing lots of opportunities and it's easy to drop something. It's also very easy to forget when you need to follow up, or when you need to connect with somebody again. And so having a plan and having a tracker will allow you to be able to very confidently, for example, go look and say, oh, I had this job interview last Tuesday and they said that they were going to make a decision by Friday and I haven't heard from them. I wonder if I should follow up. Well, you know, you were supposed to hear from them on Friday and now it's Monday or Tuesday. You can confidently and comfortably send them a follow-up email, just politely saying, hey, I remember from our conversation you were going to make a decision on Friday. I would love to know if there's any updates. So it gives you some peace of mind. I think the other thing with tracking your progress is that you have a tendency to think, oh my gosh, you know, I've been working for this project to find a job for so long. What have I been doing with myself? I don't know. I don't even know what I'm doing. And then you go back and you look, oh, I've been networking diligently. I've been applying for these jobs. And so you're in the game, and it's a reminder that you are making progress. And there's going to be moments where it feels like there isn't, because sometimes you'll get a day where all of a sudden 3 companies call you and want to interview you. And then another week will go by and it's silent, or you can't find opportunities. And so it's going to feel like an up and down. And so if you keep track of your progress, it'll remind you that you actually are moving forward and you're doing stuff for yourself and you are in control of some things. So start with a plan, treat it like it's a project, and track your progress. So recently I did a survey online because I wanted to get a sense for what people were saying were their problems that they were having finding a job. And boy, the underlying emotions were not something that I thought were going to be a big ticket item. I thought people were going to have trouble with resume formatting or interview preparation, but I realized that the real enemy in your job search is uncertainty and ambiguity, right? Uncertainty being, wow, we're human beings and we like to know how things are going to go. We do not like to think about the fact that here we're in a situation where we don't know where we're going to get a job. We don't know where it's going to be. We don't know when it's going to be. We don't know a lot. There's a lot of unknowns about a job search. So that as human beings feels terrible to us. Ambiguity is those situations where there's nuance and you have to interpret things. So think about a job interview, right? What kinds of questions should I ask? What should I be doing to prepare? Did that person like what I was saying? And having to interpret a lot of situations. Should I send a follow-up? Should I network with that person, right? There's these kinds of situations that you're going to find yourself in that aren't clear cut. So one of the big questions that we would like to know the answer to is, how long is this all going to take? And unfortunately, there isn't a really solid answer that you could say, oh, it's going to take you exactly 3.5 months to find something, or you need to apply for 27 jobs to find something. There is no real average. The closest I've seen to anything is that the absolute average, and that's considering all fields, all skill levels, all everything, is somewhere in the order of 4 to 5 months to find a job. But there's a lot of factors that affect that. So whatever the market's doing, what your specific job is that you're looking for, and what your level of expertise is. So there is, unfortunately, no answer I can give you of okay, it's going to take you X amount of time. And I wish there was, but that's the game that we're playing, is that we're just not going to know. But I will also tell you this kind of rule of thumb, something to think about, because a lot of times people will take the opportunity to say, oh, well, maybe I want to do something completely different. Maybe I, want to change jobs, or maybe I want to move to Portugal like Jess did. But one of the rules of thumb that I've seen multiple times is, the closer your jobs that you're targeting are to the job you're currently in, the quicker it'll be to get a new job. So if you're sticking with the exact same title at the exact same job level or grade level in the same industry, you're going to go quicker probably than, okay, well, I also have experience in XYZ, so maybe I'll go try and do something in the healthcare industry, or maybe I will go try and do teaching. The further you get away from what you're currently doing, the more challenging it's going to be for you to find something, and that can take a little bit longer. So I say that to help you kind of set some realistic expectations of, if you're laser focused and you're trying to find something, just a completely lateral move, that's your quickest route usually to finding something. And that's not to say close your mind. You need to get a job as quickly as you can, so you're going to close your mind to all opportunity. But I'm saying, if you're sticking to lateral moves, you're going to move probably more quickly to find something. But if you really are thinking about doing a career pivot, this is a chance for you to do that, but just be realistic and know that it might take you a little bit longer to do that. I also kind of want to say on this uncertainty and ambiguity thing, like, I don't think we talk enough about the emotional aspect of this. In a job search, you're going to also run into some things that are not really as common that you'd have to deal with in your regular life. And that's like rejection, for one, right? For the most part, we're not really putting ourselves out there a lot looking for opportunities, or like dating is an example of some place where we might be doing that, putting ourselves out there, and we might be facing rejection. But for the most part, that's not something that we're comfortable with a lot. And now you're in a job search, so you're having to really put your best foot forward. And so there's a lot of feelings that can go around, like try to protect yourself from being rejected, how dealing with the uncertainty, how do you manage this ambiguity? And honestly, if you're in a layoff situation, you could have even more negative feelings. You could have anger, you can have frustration. Why is this taking so long? So when I'm talking about this now, and why I'm talking about this, is I think it's a really good idea to start thinking about how you would manage these, right? How are you going to deal with rejection if it happens? Because if you're doing a good job search, you're going to be applying, you're going to be interviewing, and you're going to be networking. And those are situations where you are going to maybe run into some rejection in some way. So if you have a way to deal with that up front, it might make it a little bit easier. So I do think, as a part of your job search plan, think about how are you going to deal with some of these things. I did write a blog post about this, and you can read more about it. I'm going to give you the link to my website in a bit, but there's a blog post on there that goes into this idea of some things you can do to deal with uncertainty and ambiguity in greater detail. But just cliff notes here, I think as a part of your branding and your personal value proposition tomorrow, we're going to talk about exploring your values, knowing what your career vision is, and aligning with those can help a little bit, right? Because you have an idea of where you want to be. And so it makes it a little bit easier to kind of navigate the hurdles that come before it, because you have an idea of where you want to go. So that can help a little. This class today, we're talking about planning and we're talking about organization. That's part of staying in control of what you can, right? So like I mentioned, that scenario of somebody kind of sitting all day, 8 hours a day in front of their computer, applying online in their sweatpants and not taking care of themselves and letting their relationships go. That's not being in control. Being in control is having a plan, spending X amount of hours a day looking for work, strategizing and prioritizing the best job opportunities, and being in control of your health, being in control of your eating, being in control of your exercise, meditating, going in and finding joy in life. That's being in control of your life. So stay in control of what you can, and that will help you a little bit in this one area where you're dealing with a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity. I mentioned rejection already. I think it's a good idea to kind of think about, well, what will I do if I get rejected from this job that I really want to do? What is going to be my process for dealing and processing rejection? Seek info and clarification. So you can ask hiring managers questions in interviews that you want to know the answer to, and you can send them follow-up answers after the interview. I don't know how many clients I've worked with who have dealt with, oh, should I follow up? Or they said that they were going to make a decision and I haven't heard from them in 2 weeks. They must not like me. They must have decided not to hire me. You can ask for follow-up. That is totally legitimate. You would want to do it in a respectful way. But that interview is also an opportunity for you to ask questions of things you want to know. And even in the networking phase, right? Getting out there and talking to people at other companies and getting as much information about that company and their hiring processes or their projects, anything you can will help you deal with some of this uncertainty and ambiguity, because you'll have as much information as a person can have. And I mentioned, last thing, don't let your relationship slide just because you're feeling a certain way about this situation. It's hard. People know that it's hard. So make sure you have your people who love you around you. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be, struggling a little bit. But don't avoid people because you're looking for a job. Don't isolate yourself. Get out there and be around people and find the joy that you normally would in life, because that will help you stay healthier during this time. Okay. So one of the ways that you can deal with the rejection or the negative feelings that might come around job search is to compile some if-then statements for yourself. So an if-then statement is a very common one in psychology that helps you prepare, right? So for example, like if you prepared your house for an earthquake, you maybe did an earthquake drill that says, if you get an earthquake, this is what I'm going to do. So that when the earthquake happens, you have in your mind already, you know what you're going to do. And so then the earthquake is maybe a little bit less scary because you know what to do when the earthquake comes. So same thing can be with your job search, right? So maybe you apply for a job, you're really excited and hopeful about it, but you write yourself an if-then statement, okay? If I receive a rejection email, then I'm going to spend 15 minutes writing a journal entry to acknowledge my feelings and go for a walk. Now that's my if-then statement for a rejection email, but maybe yours is different. Maybe you have something that you want to do that it is an immediate response to, if this situation happens, then I'm going to do this thing. And that gives you a little plan in your mind so you're not caught off guard, because I think a lot of the stuff that stings in a job search is because we have not prepared ourselves for how we're going to deal with it. If I send out a networking email to Sam Smith and he doesn't respond, then I'm going to spend 20 minutes compiling a list of 10 other people that I'm going to send network emails out to. You have something that you're going to do if the worst case scenario happens. That'll make your life a little bit easier, so you're not caught off guard. You're not stung by the moment of something happening that you weren't in at least a little bit prepared for, right? If I'm feeling overwhelmed by this job search, then I'm going to take a break. If I start doubting my abilities due to the rejection, then I'm going to go remind myself of my strengths and accomplishments by looking at my brag book. And I'm going to show you my brag book, a little brag book on the next page. But like, think about, if these bad things happen, then I'm going to do this other thing to boost myself up. If I'm feeling demotivated, I don't feel like doing the job search, then I'm going to take a break and I'm going to, and then insert an activity that boosts your confidence before going back to the job search. Don't force yourself to just sit there, grind. Take breaks, be kind to yourself. Be as kind to yourself as you would be kind to your best friend. Okay. So I'm just going to tell you right now, I put this little slide together while I was putting together this presentation, and I felt so happy just putting together this little thing. So you could do a digital slide brag book. I think this is a great way to start a job search anyway, because a lot of us are in the mode of having to think about accomplishments, having to think about the good things. We're going to have to talk about them a ton in job search anyway. So some of it could be job search related or job related, or it could be personal. I just went and grabbed some pictures of things that I've done. A couple of years ago, back in 2017, I did, if you're from the Pacific Northwest, you'll maybe know the Enchantments up in Washington. I hiked the through hike of the Enchantments, which is an 18-mile through hike with Asgard's Pass, which is 2,000 feet of elevation gain in 1 mile. That was one of the proudest moments of my life. You don't think about these things all the time, but if you have a little something put together for yourself, it can give you a little bump of reminder of, even though you're in a bummer situation right now, you've done a lot of cool things. You've got a lot of accomplishments, work-related accomplishments, personal accomplishments. Maybe some of you have run marathons. I've knit a sweater. put something together to remind yourself is something you can go back to, touch on later if you're having those moments of doubts about yourself, because I guarantee you have things that are really awesome that you've done. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a second and just check and see how are we feeling here? Do we have any questions about what we've been talking about? The ambiguity, the uncertainty. What have we got? Anil's giving me a thumbs up. He looks okay. All right, I'm getting a couple thumbs up. Thanks, everybody. I will keep going then. Woo, lots of thumbs. All right, I'll keep going then. Okay, so another part of your job search to think about is learn about job search. So great first step coming in and talking to me today. But I would recommend getting on LinkedIn and following some other people who are thought leaders in the space. Austin, I think his last name is Belkic, but I can't be sure of that. But he is such a bright individual, so many great things that he shares on LinkedIn. Sarah Johnson, Madeline Mann, Jonathan Javier. And by the way, I'll give you a copy of this deck, so don't feel like you have to, rush to write anything down. But follow people on LinkedIn that are doing what I'm doing, which is writing resumes, helping people with job search, because they're going to share ideas all day long that may be a tip that's very useful for you. They may share something that could be the little bit of secret sauce for you that helps you keep going, or it helps you get more interviews. I like to think of myself an expert, but I don't know everything. And so following these people, I learn stuff on a daily basis. So use LinkedIn as an education source. Also recommend that LinkedIn Learning has classes. There's other classes you can take. You can get really specific. So if you're, say, struggling with interview preparation, you can find specific courses on the thing that's most difficult for you, so that you can learn some, tips that help you ramp up quicker. And the truth is, you can take free classes. Some of them might be paid, but there's lots of free stuff out there. Themuse.com is amazing. They have so many great articles. They have so much great advice. They have tons of templates, which people always really love and find templates useful. So I would definitely recommend the Muse. And then the federal government actually has a website called Career One Stop, and they have tons of stuff on there. And I think they're especially useful, like if you're thinking about making a career shift or a career change. They will, they have all kinds of tools, like, so you can get an idea of like what kinds of jobs are out there. You can compare different kinds of jobs. You might be able to see related jobs to something of interest, because the truth is there's lots of different kinds of jobs out there that you might not even know about, that might be tangential to what you're doing, that you could maybe kind of slide into easily. So I would encourage you, long story short, to make learning about job search a part of your job search. I think the expression from the book is just make yourself 1% better every day, right? Just a little bit better at your job search. And let me go back a little bit. I kind of touched on it about making your job search your job. I don't think it should be a full-time job. I don't think you should be spending 8 hours or 10 hours a day looking for a job. I think you should spend maybe 4 hours a day looking for a job. And that's really deep work. We're going to talk about what that means in some later presentations about doing real deep work to find jobs. But I encourage you to not spend every minute of your day looking for a job, because it's very taxing. It's exhausting, and you have diminishing returns. If you're sitting there hours and hours every day, you're not really doing the deep work you need to do. You're not recharging your batteries. You're not taking care of yourself. It's going to be ineffective. So I recommend spend a little time learning, apply for a few jobs, really, really good meaty jobs, and do all the work you need to do to really pursue them, and avoid doing that spray and pray where you're trying to apply for 100 jobs a day, because I don't think job search really is a numbers game. It's not about going and trying to apply for 100 jobs a day. That's not going to get you a job quicker. So be careful with your time and your energy, but make learning a little bit a part of your job search. And one last thing about learning, I highly recommend taking a class while you're looking for a job search, especially something related to your work that you're trying to apply to. So, for example, maybe you're a program and project manager, like I'm a project manager. Start taking an online PMP class. You do not even have to sit for the PMP necessarily. Just take the class so that it shows that you're working towards bettering yourself and educating yourself. You can talk about it in the interview as something you're doing to personally develop yourself. It's not something they're making you do at work. You went out of your way to get the resource to do it yourself. Just be out there trying to make yourself 1% better in a lot of ways. And that will, again, it'll give you something to think about and focus on that's positive. It's something you're in control of. It looks good. You could talk about it in interviews, and maybe you do use it for some kind of certification that will help you boost your career as well. All right. So we already talked about kind of preparing yourself for the emotional and the mental part of job search and having in mind how you're going to deal with those things. So what's the actual nuts and bolts of a good job plan? I highly recommend taking some time and brainstorming companies that you might want to work for and people that you want to network with, because networking is how you find jobs. And targeting specific companies and specific roles is much more effective than just going out and looking to see who's hiring. Don't just rely on LinkedIn job board to find jobs. There's tons of jobs boards out there. But if you do brainstorming for specific companies, then you can do better networking, because you can be, oh, I really want to work at, I don't know, Kroger. I really like the way they do their groceries, and I've always been a big fan of Kroger. I want to go work there for XYZ reasons. You can go target them. So then you can go target people to network with at Kroger. You can go do research about Kroger. And then you're a much more effective candidate, because when you do finally get an opportunity there, you've done a whole lot of homework about it. You know it's something you really want. So you've got a lot going for you. If you go LinkedIn job posting and then you go, oh, I see this small company is hiring, even if it could be a good company, you're not necessarily like have all of that forethought behind it. I'm not saying don't apply for a job if you like it, but I'm saying if you go target something, you're more likely to reach that target than if you're just looking for any random target anywhere. So do some brainstorming. If you're not using ChatGPT right now, ChatGPT is amazing. You can go in there and say, write me a list of 10 companies that are doing something specific that you're interested in, or play with the prompts till it gives you lists of companies that you might be interested in working at. It could be maybe like you're interested in environmental impact. You could write me a list of the top 10 corporations in Oregon that are working towards climate change initiatives or something. You can get really specific about what you're looking for, and ChatGPT can be, it give you a list of companies like that. Very cool. So brainstorming, definitely recommend that. And then understanding. So what that means is get a sense of knowing what you need, what value you bring, and what's going on in the market, right? So knowing what you need, go look at your finances, do an analysis of your budget so you know how much money you need. Go look at what your skills are worth in the market. There's tools, and we're going to talk about that, I think, in the last section on navigating job offers, but there's websites you can go to. What's the name of it? PayScale is one where you can go and you can enter some data. PayScale takes a little while. You have to answer a bunch of questions, but it'll tell you how much you should be looking for in terms of like an annual salary in the market. And it can get really specific, like by zip code of what you're worth in that specific market that you're in. Or if you want to move to a different market, you could see, how much I should, after entering your experience and your education and everything, it'll tell you, oh, well, Jess, you should be looking for around like $100,000 a year based on your inputs. That can be very helpful to you, knowing, what you're worth, and then understanding what's going on in the market, right? So I brought up ChatGPT, right? Things are changing right now. We're in a moment of some flux because of AI and what it's doing in the market. So you can go bet your dollar that there's need for AI skills. So, hey, I've always been interested in that. Maybe I'll go take a class in it, see what jobs are available there, know what's going on for yourself, know what you're worth, and know what the market needs. And that's market research, really, right? And that's all really valuable stuff to know before you just put your resume together and start applying. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about branding and personal value proposition. That's one piece of your marketing, just like your resume. And you want to make sure that you've really got that dialed in, that you're clear, crisp, and concise across all your modes of communication of what is that value you bring. And then tracking, I mentioned it already, we want to keep track of what it is we've done, what it is we need to do. So your plan, you want to include these 4 things. Okay, so I already talked about this a little bit. Brainstorm your companies, which ones you might want to work at. Has there been anyone of interest for you? A little interesting story. A couple of years ago, when my nephew was young, we used to have a running thing where every year for Christmas, I would give him a Tony Chocolonely chocolate bar, because Tony Chocolonely is like, it's a kind of expensive chocolate, but they're working on slavery-free chocolate. And they're not only just working on it for their chocolate, but they're working on it to change the whole industry. They want to be disruptive and have slavery-free chocolate. So I always gave my nephew a Tony Chocolonely for Christmas in his stocking. And then when I was looking for work the last time, I avidly pursued Tony Chocolonely's, and unfortunately at that moment they didn't have any opportunities that fit what I was needing at that time. But I would say, like, there's going to be some companies that you're like, ooh, I would just absolutely, if the chance happened, I want to work for. And so those are good ones to target in your job search. I'll tell you right now, I would love to work at Tony Chocolonely's even today. Individuals, okay? So brainstorm a list of people that you want to network with, and you can pull a list of your people out of LinkedIn if you want to go that route, and then highlight or prioritize the people that you want to do it, that you want to network with. I know people hate networking, and there's lots of reasons why. We're going to talk about it on the networking class. But I will tell you this, networking is the way that the world works. It is how opportunities are found. It is how opportunities are secured, because some friend of a friend knows of a place, or a friend, or even someone has a loose association, gives you a recommendation through their company. It's very, very powerful. But if it is overwhelming to you, start very small. When I was in my first year at Intel, I worked at a very small startup section of Intel called AppUp, and AppUp was an app store like Apple. I don't know why Intel was in that space, but that's where I got hired first. And of course, 1 year in, the funding was cut, the program was EOL'd, and so I've been at Intel 1 year. I have very little network. I have no idea what's going on, and I'm freaking out. This is my very first experience with layoffs. And so I didn't know what was happening. And very, very luckily, I grabbed the 2 people that I did know pretty well and felt safe enough with. And I said, and I was so candid about it. I said, hey, look, I have no network here. I have no networking skills. can I practice networking with you? That's how direct I was. Can I practice networking with you? And from there, I was able to build out a little bit bigger network at Intel, and I was able to find an opportunity, and I was able to stay. So my point being with that is, if you hate networking, you find it miserable, sit in on the interview class next week, or not interview, networking class next week for sure, to learn about networking, but also start with 2 people. Grab 2 people. If you need to, say, hey, I need to practice networking. Can we have a networking conversation? And then from there, you can, ask them questions, or you can ask them, hey, would you mind giving me the name of 2 people that you recommend that I could network with? And you can build your network out from there. So my point is, make a list, be strategic about who you want to network with, and go. Start small, start slow if you need to, but get going on the networking. Okay. So I mentioned this in the other slide about getting to know what you need, right? So getting to know your budget, so you know how much money you need. You're writing down maybe what your walk away number is, right? What is that? But what is that salary that you're not going to accept? What benefits do you need? What location do you need? All the kinds of things that you need out of a job, make sure you've written it down somewhere, so that later when you go to decide or you go to negotiate, you know what you need and you can stick to that. Because it's not going to do you any good to accept an offer that's $25,000 below what you can live on. You need to know what you have so that you can be, or you need to know what you need so that you can be very specific in targeting those roles and deciding how you're going to navigate negotiations later. And we're going to talk about that a lot more in the last class, but it's a good idea as a part of your plan. Write your stuff down. Put it all in one place, and I'm going to give you a place to put it in a minute. Personal branding. We're going to go through this tomorrow, but you need to know what you're good at. You need to know what you like doing, and you need to know what kinds of problems that you can solve. And you need to know how to differentiate yourself. It's impossible to do a really good job search and get a really good job without knowing who you are. We'll talk about it tomorrow in greater detail. Why is it important? Here's the areas where you're hitting, right? It looks like just resume is one of those areas. Everyone goes to the resume. This is what I need, resume. But you're going to need to write cover letters. You're going to need to put together your LinkedIn profile. You need to introduce yourself. You're never going to go into an interview in which they don't ask you, tell us about yourself. They're going to say, tell us about yourself, or some version of that in every single interview you're going to go in. So you need to be able to introduce yourself and talk about yourself. That's marketing. That's brand. Every time you network with someone new, you're going to have to tell people your personal value proposition. And to be fair, you're going to have to probably go back and remind some people of your personal value proposition, because not everyone knows what everyone does. So you are going to have to know that and be really clear, crisp, and concise, so that when you have the opportunities to talk to people about yourself, you're very targeted and specific about what you want to say. And then lastly, portfolio. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but only about 10% of candidates for jobs bring in a portfolio, and that could be a PDF slide deck, or not a PDF, a PowerPoint presentation. It could be printed if you're doing physical interviewing. But every one of my clients, is something that I recommend, is that they put together a portfolio and they bring it with them when they interview. I just had a client last week who was working with a recruiter, and I can't remember the company, but she was going to have just a screening call with that recruiter. And right before the call, she sent over just a one slide of connecting the dots for that person, of this is my experience, this is what I think you're looking for, just one little slide, putting things in a refined way, connecting the dots for that recruiter. And she was able to move on to the first round of interviews. So putting together a little something extra, beyond the resume, beyond what is asked of you, can be very, very powerful. I'm a very big fan of extra credit. And so a portfolio is one additional piece of your marketing that you're going to want to think about when you're putting together your job search plan. Okay, last but not least, track your progress. Keep a place where all of this stuff is in one spot. Now, you can do this however you want to do it. You can use the tracker I'm going to show you in a second that I put together, or you can create your own in Excel. You can put it in PowerPoint if you want. You could do it on a, I don't care if you do it in a cork board if you want to. However you want to do it best, but make sure you're keeping track of everything. And I think I have somewhere I have pulled it up. Let me see. Here we go. So I will give you a link in a minute to this tracker that I have created. It's called Launchpad Job Search Tool. And I have on the first tab here a readiness checklist that is all the things that I think you need to think about, from defining your personal brand down to thinking about what your monetary needs or your financial needs are for a negotiation. You can kind of track that as you go. Let me hang on here and see if I've got a question.
Hey, Jess, it's Tina. If you were sharing an Excel sheet or something, we were still seeing the presentation.
Oh, dear. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Hang on a second. Let me fix that. I might get a little echo here for a second, but okay, let's see. Where is it? Okay, now you should be able to see. Okay, so I will give you the link to this so you can see this. Here's a list, the top 9 things that you need to think about, your kind of deliverables for your project. But each one of these down here, it has a tab. So for personal brand, I have some exercises and some links you can do, some self-evaluation, some exercises that you can, go out and ask people what they think of what is your personal brand. This is causing me problems here. So elevator pitch. Okay, here's the networking tracker. So I mentioned before, do a brainstorming session, right? So write yourself a list of all the people that you wanna network with. I'm gonna network with Jess and Sam and Steve, and then have it in here. And then you can keep track of, this is the time I met up with them. This is who introduced us. This is some basic info. Put down meeting notes. Anything that you could think of. I'm going to follow up. I'm going to send Sam that article I was telling him about. Whatever you need to put in here, keep track of it. And then we have another one. Let me see if I can find it here. Opportunity tracker. So this is where you start by brainstorming these companies that you might be interested in. But if ultimately you're going to list, I applied for a job at Costco. This is the title. This is a salary. You can include a link to the post. When did you apply? Did anyone talk to you? Did you have an interview? I would actually, even now that I'm looking at it, add like a column of if there's anybody that like you could network with about that particular job and kind of connect the dots, but just keep track of everything. And so this is a useful tool. I've basically put everything that I think that I would keep track of in a job search all in this one worksheet. And like you can list your top priorities, right? Oh, I need some flexibility because I need to take care of people at home, or I need a job specifically in a specific location, or whatever your priorities might be. You can put together a budget, and then there's some tools in here for you thinking about, okay, how you would decide. Because there's going to be some points where you're going to have to make decisions. Maybe you have to decide between 2 offers, or you need to decide if you want to take a specific offer. And so there's some tools in here for you to think about negotiating offers. But there's this worksheet is loaded with stuff. Let me see. Let me get you the link real quick here. So you have it. I'll put it in chat. It's in resources. And by the way, in resources, this link I'm going to send you, there is the job search tool that I'm showing. And then there's also slides from today's presentation. I'm going to put all the slides for all the classes in here. So if later you want to reference the slide deck that I shared today, you can come down here and you can have a copy of it. And you can use it however you need to. Let me go back to the meeting and we'll go into chat here. Let me stop sharing for a second. Chat with everyone. Thanks for that, Carrie. I also loved Blue Hire. There's the link for the resources. So like I said, it's got that tool I just showed you you can use. You can take a copy of it, but it also has the decks from all of our presentations that we're going to be talking about over time. Let me look here and see what I got left in my deck here. I think we're just about through. All right, tracking progress. Okay, so final tips and takeaways. So remember what I said. Get a plan. Take care of yourself physically, emotionally, psychologically. Get to know yourself, where it is you want to go, what your value is in the market, what's going on in the market. We're going to talk tomorrow about marketing materials and your brand and your goals, and then keep track of everything so that you don't lose sight of everything that you've worked on. So with that, I think that puts me at about an hour on the dot. So today we talk about planning and organization. Tomorrow we're going to talk about personal branding and value proposition. Same time, there is a different link, but you should have all the links already. And then we'll just keep moving forward. If you have any questions, you can email me at industrioustruman@gmail.com. You should have that email. I emailed you yesterday. You should have the link to my website where you can get those resources. And with that, that is the end of the presentation as I have written it. So if you have questions, now is the time.
Hey, Jess, it's Maria. I just want to say thank you. It's just amazing. This is a great, kick in the butt, and also reassuring, right? We're not alone. There's ways to go about it. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. I mean, this is exactly what I needed. So I really, really, really appreciate it.
Well, you are very welcome. I have a special place in my heart for anybody else who's worked at Intel, and I know it's tough times right now. So I kind of wanted to share what it was that I know, so that you can get going. And, you can do it, and you are not alone. There's lots of people. I think the stats are like 90-something% of people go through layoffs at some point in their career. So it's going to happen. Just candidly, I had in the last recession in 2008, I was just out of college and I got hit and I looked for work for 2 years. And unfortunately, at that time, I knew nothing about getting a job. And so that was a really rough time of not knowing. And so that's one of the reasons that I want to teach this class and get that out there, because it doesn't have to be as hard as we sometimes make it for ourselves. So I want to try and make it as easy for you as I can. So you are most welcome, Maria. Well, I'll open it up. If there's any questions, in fact, let me turn off the recording. So if there's any